Hello and welcome to Scottish Ancestral Records. I am Lisa May Young and I'm being joined today by Ken Nisbet of the Scottish Genealogy Society. Hello Ken, how are you?
Oh, not too bad. Sitting in my lounge, looking out the window at the Sainsbury's car park, advertising plug, and I can spot when it's convenient to go across. When it's not too busy in these strange times that we're living in.
It is very strange times because we usually meet through the SGS and do our podcasts, and we were
Yes.
actually meant to do one on Saturday, but I'm guessing that's not an essential journey. So
I would say so. I thought I was around a cemetery yesterday, but it was a nature walk. Well, that's what I'm saying.
Definitely.
But yes, so I think we're going to be talking about parish registers today.
Yes, yeah. I have to say, Parish Records for me are a bit of I've used them, but I'm looking forward to hearing what you tell us about them because they're a bit of a grey area for me.
Okay, right. Well, Part 1855, of course, before statutory registration, we're dealing with church records. And in Scotland, we talk about all parish registers, or OPRs for short. You hear the term bandied around, but it's the parish registers of the established church, or if you want to call it the state church. Although the Queen is not the head of the Church of Scotland, but Princess Anne, I think, is the head of the Church of Scotland.
Oh, that's changed, hasn't it?
Yeah. So in Scotland, after the Reformation, we have the Church of Scotland, and that's really the only church. But the Church of Scotland has continually split. And in fact, the Protestant churches continue to split. I mean, most recently over the appointment of gay ministers or evangelical Christian movement, as you've seen further splits even in the late part of the early part of the 21st century.
Mm-hmm.
So we're dealing with church records. So they're called OPRs, but they're church records. Now, after the Reformation, the body governing the church said that every parish should keep a register of births, marriages, or primarily not necessarily births, but baptisms, because obviously your child being baptized.
Yeah.
But what they found was that, okay, in the parish of Errol in 1553, that's the first parish register. That's extant.
Wow.
But not every parish, as you probably know when you've looked at parish registers, a lot of them didn't start till much later, even though there was various acts in the 1660s and later on trying to chase people up to keep these records. Obviously, we have the Civil War, the British Civil War, and that disrupted records. And in some parts of Scotland, Episcopalianism or Catholicism came back. People just didn't keep them. And so you find certain parts of Scotland, even the Western Isles and the north of Scotland, are particularly notorious for not having parish registers until the later part of the 18th century, or even indeed the early part of the 19th century.
Ken, do you think it's a lot to do with the congregation and who was the minister at the time? And
it could be because quite often it wasn't actually the minister who was writing up the parish registers. It would be the session clerk, because as you know, in Scotland, the congregation is administered by a session, usually a group of worthy individuals who would be put together to keep the parish registers. In fact, my brother-in-law is a session clerk for a Church of Scotland congregation in Aberdeen, and my sister's also on the session. But nowadays, I mean, he wouldn't be going around finding people, particularly for saying, go and sit in the stool if you've been misbehaved. That you certainly wouldn't get off with that. But the session clerk would be the person who would really he would have to be somebody who was literate, but it's certainly the case with the early registers with Scots old writing that the writing sometimes will not be necessarily very clear to read.
Oh, that's,
It's something to be well aware of, that the spelling of surnames in particular can be how the name was pronounced, Nisbet coming across as Nisbet or various others, or Max changing between MEC and MC, and sometimes even with some of my family in Nairnshire using aliases. I've got Kinloch alias McPherson, alias Kinloch. Tended to be more common in the Highland areas. I don't know if it's got anything to do with the Jacobite rebellion, possibly so. Certainly, I know in the case of Glenlivet, it was Catholics pretending to be Protestants, or there was quite a heavy use in Glenlivet of aliases. And you'll see that reflected in the parish register. See McPherson alias Gower. And then they'll drop. The other thing, of course, particularly in places like Nairnshire, is you get the tea names in the fishing villages. Nairn has common surname, for example, is Main, but you get Main Bockle, Main Mine, and so on. So tea names in fishing villages. But the parish registers, now, what's in the parish registers can vary from parish to parish. And generally, you do find that in the cities, there's more information. So, for example, if I take one from Edinburgh, it says that, and this is in 1796, and it's 1797, I should say, it says 21st of February 1797, Colin Quarry, labourer in Pleasantshire, and Marion Lodi, his spouse, had a son born Monday the 20th, current name John, witnesses the congregation of the Chapel of Ease. Now, the chapel, that's an immediate indication the Chapel of Ease is not a Church of Scotland. That is one of the offshoots, and there were numerous offshoots, some of them with weird and wonderful names like the Wee Lichties and the New Wee Lichties. And it's really partly over to do with the appointment of ministers and or the use of the Bible, particularly in the 19th century. That's really when you get the continuing free church. So lots of splits in the Church of Scotland. So in town, what you may find is sometimes you're not even going to get the mother's name, particularly in the 16th or 17th centuries. It might simply, for example, have said, Colin Quarry had a son called John. And it might not get,
history.
And it might not even give his date of birth. It might simply say baptized, because what the church is interested in is baptisms. Now, one has to also be aware that at one point between 1783 to 1794, the government put a tax on baptisms and marriages and burials. So, being good Scots, we don't pay the taxes. So you suddenly find that a lot of congregations, there's a huge drop. Or they might baptize the first child and say, we're not baptizing the rest. The first child, particularly if he's male, because he might inherit something. So, let's notice that he's legitimate, he's been baptized. And then they forget. Or somebody in 1795, you see a whole lot of children from a couple being baptized. That is not an indication of multiple plus. Because if it gives us, you'll find that the family said, oh, there's no tax, we're going to get all our kids baptized. And sometimes you find that, sometimes, quite often, it's at the end of the parish register, you might find that there's multiple baptisms, or a new minister comes in, so he goes round and he chases all the couples.
So again, Ken, this is where, if you like, social history meets ancestry.
It is, yes, yes. I mean, because the government was putting this tax, people stopped doing it. Stop paying. Now, one thing to be aware of when you're looking at the parish registers and baptisms, if you see the word natural, that means illegitimate. That's an illegitimate child.
Ah.
But yeah, they might say the other word. They might say lawful, so you know that's a legitimate child. That means that the parents have been married, not necessarily in the Church of Scotland, but it's a legitimate child. But if you see the word natural, and that's possibly, you might not see a father's name given, you might see a lawful, or you might see a child baptized post-nuptial fornication. In other words, the child was born, sex took place before they got married. Mm-hmm. Sometimes they refer to that with baptisms. Always with parish registers, do look for the witnesses' names and look at the surnames of the witnesses, but also importantly, look at all the other entries on the page, because quite often you sometimes can twig that the females' names of the witnesses are not necessarily their married names. They might be their maiden names. Mm-hmm. Because sometimes, of course, women in Scotland, you could keep your maiden name when you got married. So sometimes the thing. Now, in Lancashire, for example, quite often there's 5 or 6 witnesses, mm-hmm. and you might find all the witnesses' forenames is the same as the name of the child. Mm-hmm. It's almost as if they've gone on, how many Johns can we get, or how many Janets can we get? Yeah, so sometimes you might be lucky, and it might give the relationship of the witness to the child. Dundee's known for that. Dundee's known for giving the Dundee Parish Registers are known for giving that information. I have it with my own family. I've only seen it a few times, but they've actually said it's the child's grandparent or mm-hmm. it's the aunt of the child. But occasionally it does happen, and of course that helps greatly. So baptisms, as I say, now when it comes to marriages,
I remember when I was doing my own family research, it was my mum's side of the family, and it was a parish marriage back in that time, and it was late 1700s, early 1800s, and it was the baby had been baptized just after the marriage, just slightly after the marriage, and the reverend had the same name as the family. So I was like, there must be a family, is it the brother or the, that have kind of just...
Yes, I mean, ministers, of course, through publications like the Fast Eye, Ecclesiasticae Scotai, ministers particularly are relatively straightforward to research. You can research ministers. And quite often, if you look at the statistical accounts, they'll quite often give a history of the parish itself, and that always gives you, that's your social history to an extent. If you want to hear about the church buildings, or if a church was out of use, or whether it's a new parish, because obviously the number of parishes, particularly in the cities, expanded enormously in the 19th century. Then obviously we got on to marriages. Now, again, marriage, after the Reformation, they say marriages should be recorded. That's obviously important when it comes to illegitimate children. You have to know that the parents have been married. So what you're dealing with primarily, of course, is proclamations or bans. Mm-hmm. Now, bans should be 3 consecutive Sundays in a row. And what you might actually find in the parish registers is not actually the date of marriage, but the last date of when the last bans were read. Now, sometimes you will also find that where the couple came from different parishes, that the band would be read in both parishes. Then it's important to look at the records for each parish, because for example, if you take, say, Aberdeen, what's in Old Marker would be different to St. Nicholas. So what I think St. Nicholas